We're all familiar with the narrative by now. A young Jew, typically between 18 and 35 years of age, often a day school or Jewish summer camp grad, announces themselves as a member of the anti-Israel crowd via social media posts or through conversations with family or friends. Perhaps they don't even fully announce it, cognizant of the backlash they'll receive from their childhood communities. More often than not, these are not the people wearing masks and keffiyehs and harassing Jews on the streets. More often than not, they strongly identify as Jewish, but without any connection to Israel, which sounds like a contradiction to us, but isn't to them. Usually, this specific kind of anti-Israel Jew is of Ashkenazi descent. They are at least second-generation American, usually third or more. They were raised conservative or reform and are not particularly observant now. They are not meaningfully connected to Jewish life in their day-to-day activities. They don't go to temple, they are not involved in any communal programs or on any Jewish boards or connected to legacy Jewish organizations. They don't have children. They do have strong Jewish roots. They are Jewishly literate. They know the holidays, the prayers, the songs, the customs. They were bar and bat mitzvahed, had Jewish wedding ceremonies. They've likely never been to Israel or have only been with family or as a student, and usually not very recently. To categorize these folks as anti-Jewish or self-hating is to misunderstand them entirely. To participate in the same binary, polarized thinking being weaponized so effectively against mainstream Jews by our enemies. You're either pro-Israel or a self-hating anti-Semite. As usual, the truth is much more nuanced. Allow me to illustrate the reality with a concrete example. The 2022 hit song Pink Pony Club by avowed anti-Israel recording artist Chappell Roan, both because it's an apt parallel and because it's been stuck in my head for 3 years. It tells the story of a young, free-spirited, queer Gen Zer who leaves behind her traditional Tennessee upbringing, which she still openly loves and thinks of all the time, to join the world of the Pink Pony Club, a special place where everyone's a queen every single day. It's where she belongs. In this scenario, Tennessee is the childhood Jewish community of our young anti-Israelers. It represents their parents, teachers, synagogues, family, friends. This is a community with whom they share bonds of love and history, but also one they left some time ago and no longer have any engagement with on a day-to-day basis. Not out of shame or spite or any fault of the hometown, but simply because it's not the Pink Pony Club. It's no longer their core community. It's no longer where they belong, and there's nothing inherently wrong or malicious about that. The Pink Pony Club represents the leftist progressive community in which they have been building their adult lives. We love to use the term echo chamber, with its decidedly negative connotation, to describe folks who surround themselves entirely with people who act and think as they do. But in practice, if we're being real, another way to say echo chamber is friend group or community. Most of society functions this way. You're not a sheep or an idiot because you and your friends have the same values, priorities, ideas, or approaches. If your friends are going out to a restaurant, are you a sheep for also going there because you enjoy doing what your friends do and trust they picked somewhere good that takes into account your likes and dislikes? As usual, when there's discord and misunderstanding, it means we aren't talking to each other. We aren't asking questions and listening to the answers. Instead, we're making assumptions from our own viewpoint rather than discovering the truth of theirs. And the truth is that though anti-Israel Jews are obviously viewed as an extreme fringe minority within the mainstream Jewish world, aka Tennessee, that world is not of great importance to the Pink Pony Clubbers anymore. Who matters to them are the girls and boys inside the club, their true community. And within this circle, they're actually the majority. So when mainstream Jews wonder how these young folks are standing against their own community, remember, they aren't. Your community is not their community anymore. And herein lies the actual problem. One that it's too late to solve at scale for this current crop of kiddos, but must be urgently corrected for the generation just behind them and forevermore. Other than the profile I've already outlined, 2 other things need to be true for these specific kinds of anti-Israel Jews to exist. The first is that they must already be estranged from the day-to-day life of the mainstream Jewish community. If there's nothing Jewish about you except the way you were raised, that's basically the same as being born in Oklahoma and living in Japan. It's where you came from, it's a part of you, and it always will be. But it has very little to do with how you spend your time, prioritize your life, or move throughout the world. The second condition, and in a way these two are linked, is that to be an anti-Israel Jew, you must, by default, be uneducated about what Jews are, what Israel means to Jews, and the reality of life on the ground in Israel. Any person of any stripe who is well educated in these three areas cannot possibly be anti-Israel. They can be anti the current government, as a huge number of both diaspora and Israeli Jews certainly are. But when you have all the facts, you cannot possibly remain anti the entire country in the face of them, unless you truly are an anti-Jew racist who wants to see us destroyed, which, as we've already established, is not usually the MO for this particular group of Jews. Now, you might be wondering, if these Jews are not actively connected to the community and only know about this conflict through cherry-picked facts and the privileged lens of assimilated American Jewish culture, why are they saying anything on this topic at all? And it's the right question to ask. The answer is exactly what I discussed in my monologue 2 episodes ago. Contemporary society and the pervasiveness of social media have given people the false notion that they are both obligated and entitled to weigh in on the topics of the day, regardless of their capacity to meaningfully do so. In other words, people who, as we've established, know little about Israel and are not actively connected to the mainstream Jewish community feel a social responsibility to weigh in on the former as representatives of the latter. And with this microphone thrust upon them and no ability to engage on the topic in a deep or nuanced way, they find themselves backed into a corner. Pick a side. They know they can't possibly be on the side of the group that's killing Gazan children on their TikTok feeds, so that must mean they're on the other side. It's the binary trap. Even if they believe, as many of these anti-Zionists do, that Israel actually does deserve its own sovereign state, which would in fact make them Zionists, but tomato, tomato, they still consider themselves part of the anti-Israel camp because they can't possibly be pro if pro means being on the side of the army that's bombing babies. We've talked about this 100 times on the show. People with no grip of the subject dumping their low information opinions into the public sphere with seemingly no desire to get it right, which is precisely the case here. These are folks with no skin in the game. So there's no incentive for them to take the time and effort required to actually get it right. In their circles, they're already right. And to do the extra homework takes intention and effort that they simply don't care enough to put in. If they did, they would have already done it in the first place. A year ago, I met with some folks from Search for Common Ground, a global conflict resolution organization actually on the ground with key stakeholders working on geopolitical stalemates like this all around the world. The idea that stuck with me from that meeting was that it's always the people who are the least involved, the least touched by a conflict, who formed the most rigid opinions and are the least helpful in bringing the conflict to an end. Think about that. Those are our well-meaning but woefully misguided anti-Israel Jews. They remind me of Tom and Daisy Buchanan from the classic novel The Great Gatsby. Careless people. Careless people who smash things and then retreat into their carelessness and let other people clean up the mess they made. It's maddening. It's dangerous. It's irresponsible. It's shameful. But it isn't nefarious. It isn't Jew hatred. It isn't self-hatred. And it honestly isn't that difficult to understand. These are disconnected, uneducated people surrounded by like-minded peers, all reinforcing one another in their disconnected, uneducated worldviews that they're not all that concerned with anyway and are only focused on because progressive society says they're supposed to be. So what do we do about it? Well, we deal with the present and we deal with the future. For the present, we need to stop being hypocrites. You don't want to be painted as a baby killer just because you're a Jew who supports Israel. Don't paint every anti-Israel Jew as a self-hating Hamas supporter because they don't like seeing children starve or get crushed by buildings. We need to talk to the anti-Israel Jews in our lives, using my 4 C's of difficult conversation, of course, which you can find in episode 6 if you're new here. Communication leads to understanding, and with understanding, there's at least room to breathe, to be connected, room for love and respect. The changing of the minds part, if it happens at all, can only happen once there is mutual respect, trust, and understanding. You need to pave the road first before anybody can meet you on it. As for the future, we need to deal with this problem a few clicks upstream. The problem isn't that disconnected, uneducated Jews are turning against Israel. The problem is that we're failing to stop our children from becoming disconnected, uneducated Jews. The onus falls on both the parents and our Jewish institutions. Jewish children must understand that we are a people, an ancient tribe, for whom religion is but one facet of all we share. It's much harder to disconnect from your family than it is from your shul. Jewish children must know that Jews are not rich white Europeans, but that the world is full of Jews of all colors and countries and socioeconomic backgrounds, and even the ones who present as white do so conditionally. Jewish teens must know the history of our people, not just the Bible and not just the Holocaust, but everything else in between. They must understand that they live on a point on a long line of resilience in the face of unceasing persecution. They must know what happened to us in England and France and Spain and Russia and North America. They must know the ins and outs of 48 and 67 and the fall of the Shah and the Farhud and the Intifadas and every other pivotal moment in Israeli history from all angles. If all we're teaching them is holidays, songs, and tikkun olam, we can't be surprised when the only things they know about being Jewish are holidays, songs, and tikkun olam. We can fix this. We have to fix this. And we will. If there's one thing Jews know how to do, it's endure. So we beat on, boats against the current, but we always find a way. This is the 35th episode of Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt.